E-readers have been around for years, but you might have noticed a relatively recent boom in e-ink note-taking tablets, like the Remarkable 2, which allow you to take digital notes with a paper-like experience. All the benefits of digital without having stacks of paper and sharpening pencils, but also a lot of the benefits of paper that you don't see in typical iPads. It's easier on the eyes, it feels like you're writing with a pencil, has a longer battery life. Well, after this trend really got popular, the biggest e-reader of them all, the Kindle, has finally joined the chat with their Kindle Scribe, which not only comes with a pen, which we'll talk a lot about in this video, but it also happens to also be the largest Kindle yet. So let's start off with what are the functions of writing in the first place? Like, why would you even want to do this? The obvious one, of course, is to take notes, right? You can have a notebook on here, but along with the notebook, there are a lot of different templates from calendar and different ways, spreadsheets, things you can do on here, and I'll talk about that in a different segment of this video, but you can also annotate books. We can mark up PDFs, and you can use the pen in many different situations like that, as well as just navigating through the interface on here. But of course, writing is not everything with this. It also works like a normal traditional Kindle with ebooks and magazines and even an internet browser, sort of. And of course, it has audiobooks as well. But the display on here, as I mentioned, this is the largest Kindle to date. It is a 10.2-inch e-ink display with 300 dpi, so it's like pixels per inch essentially. And this is it does a fantastic job, honestly. E-ink has come a really long way over the years. Now there are actually some out there that are color. I'm a little disappointed this one's not in color, but still, it's really sharp. It's easy to see in absolutely any light. Obviously, in sunlight it works well because it is e-ink, but also in the dark as well. This has a backlight on here that is not only adjustable for the brightness, but it also has auto brightness, so it can detect and adjust itself, and it is a tunable white. So you can have a warm yellow in the evening, almost like an orange really, and then during maybe an earlier morning time when you don't want that warmth, you can have it more like a brighter white light in the background. And of course, you can turn it off when it's bright out in the middle of the day and save the battery, because the battery on here already lasts a super long time. In addition, you can turn this into dark mode, where it just inverts all of the white and black on here, which again is kind of a nice feature if you prefer dark mode. For me, I think light mode, if you're ever gonna use light mode, an e-ink is the time to do that. There are, of course, some drawbacks, like e-ink displays have never been known for a fast refresh rate, and this is no exception. There are some rare artifacts as well, so like when you're writing, if you erase something, sometimes you can kind of still see it, but for the most part, it does a really good job of refreshing and not having that etched in there. And also, despite the slower refresh rate, the writing experience really is pretty smooth with almost no lag at all. Like writing with this, I'm usually one that's pretty picky about the lag on devices. Maybe this is not quite at like iPad or Samsung level, like predictive lag, but this does a pretty good job. Like I can't complain. It feels a lot like I'm writing very naturally on here. And the display also has the ability to make grays, so it's not just black or white. There is a highlighter that you can use, and it makes it like a kind of a medium gray. But speaking of highlighting the writing experience, I want to talk a little bit more about using the pen, because that's going to be a huge part of why you'd buy this over some other Kindles out there. Like, this is a lot more expensive than most other Kindles. So looking at the writing experience, this pen right here it just feels like a large fat pencil, but when you're writing, to me, it feels a little bit more like you're writing with a fine tip Sharpie. So you are getting a pretty decent amount of resistance on here, and you can hear it. So if you listen right now, so you can kind of hear that it does sound a lot like graphite on paper. It feels a little bit like graphite on paper, but glides just a little bit smoother. So to me, like I said, it feels a lot more like a fine tip Sharpie. It's definitely not as smooth and slippery as like Samsung and Apple on traditional tablets or folding phones for that matter. And so I think that's a big benefit. The pen is also magnetic, so it sticks on one side. It's flat on one side here as well, so it won't roll off a table. You don't need to charge it, and a huge benefit is that there are actually two options. So you can save money with the basic pen, which is what I did. It works perfectly fine. Or you can pay for the premium model, which has a pen with one button on there, and you can customize the button. By default, it comes as a highlighter, and you have an eraser, a built-in eraser function on the back. Looking at the tablet itself, we have some pretty chunky bezels around here. That's common for e-ink displays like this. On the left side, or on the right side, depending on how you flip it, that is going to be an especially fat bezel that's meant to make it easier to hold with one hand. For me, I think the bezels are already thin enough that you could do it with one hand, especially because the palm rejection on here is fantastic. Like, you can't actually write with your finger. It only writes with the pen. So that's a big benefit there. But like I said, the fat bezel, if you're gonna make a large bezel like that, my first complaint here is that they didn't add buttons. Like I think a home button would really help the interface, and maybe like a page turn button would be nice as well. But something I really like about this is that they know this is going to be for writing. So on the back, they put these nice little 4 rubber pads. So when you set it on a desk, it really doesn't slide around, especially when you put a little bit of pressure on to write. And so again, the writing experience feels very natural, and I can write pretty accurately in my opinion. And I mentioned the bezel could be on the right or left side because this does have auto rotate where you can flip it over and it'll switch just like that. So if you're right or left-handed, it doesn't matter. You're not able to have it sideways. It's always either up or down in a vertical orientation. Next, let's talk a little bit more about note-taking. Not like using the pen, but actually the concept of having notes on here. It's sufficient, but this is where it starts to feel a little bit more like a first-gen device. It does lack some features, like searchable notes would be really nice. You can share notes by email or within the Kindle app on your phone or on a browser as well. There are also a lot of great notebook templates on here. So if we tap on the top, tap on notebook settings, you can see we have, what is that, like about 18 different notebook layouts we can have. So regular lines, thick lines, like different margins on here, as well as a calendar and like kind of a spreadsheet thing, kind of a presentation mode as well. There's a lot of different notebook layouts we can have, and I think that's really nice. Unfortunately, if you apply one of them to one page, it applies to all pages in that notebook, so you really have to make multiple notebooks based on like the page style you want. And within a longer notebook, like if you want to use one and have like, 50 pages in there, you can't really rearrange them. Like I wish you'd be able to like kind of zoom out and see all the pages. First of all, to navigate through them, that would be really nice. You can't really do that. But second of all, if you think of like a new note and you want to add it in and it made sense in between 2 other pages, like you can't really insert it there, at least not from the tablet. All right, on a slightly different note, there are a lot of great cases available that can hide and hold the pen, as well as prop up the tablet in different orientations so it's easier to write on, easier to read, and of course it'll protect it as well. But I found that not having a case has its benefits as well. The device is so thin, it looks, on the back, looks like a classic iPad. Super, super thin, and the benefit here is that when you set it on a table, you're able to write all the way up to the edges, and it's not like too high up where you have to like put something under your wrist. It feels natural, and you're able to write anywhere on the entire display. But of course, note-taking and writing is not everything with this device. In fact, I would say probably the main reason you should be buying this would be for the reading experience. I love, of course, e-readers are great. No distractions, so much smaller, portable. You can have tons of different books. You can buy a new book without having to wait for shipping or going to a library. It's all right there. And in this sense, the lack of like email and even a good browser and things like that is kind of nice. Like you don't have any distractions on here either. The benefit of having the pen with this is that you can make annotations. The annotations are in like a sticky note style rather than writing in the margins. I would love to write in the margins, but instead you kind of just have to like tap on where you want it and, handwrite or type whatever note you want. Those are saved in their own folder and you can browse through them. But again, it's not like visible on the page. You can also, of course, highlight things and you can search as well. They have dictionary as well as Wikipedia access, and you have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity. So getting new books, getting audiobooks, this one's 16 gigabytes on here, but you can go up to 64. It means you can get a lot of audiobooks on here and connect Bluetooth earbuds and listen to your audiobook. But this is not without its drawbacks. I already hinted at a couple, and there are quite a few more as well, which doesn't mean it's not a good device. These are just things that I noticed that I think you should be aware of before you buy it. The first thing is that the Kindle interface is clearly very old and it has some inconsistencies. So if you're in a book or if you're in a notebook, you have to tap on the top and hit back to go home. But if you're in the Kindle store, you have to tap on the X to go home. So it's just like little things like that throughout the interface that they need to be updated. Or at the very least, like I said, just add a home button. It would make it a lot easier. Additionally, the browser can do almost nothing. You really can't load like any web pages at all. Other than that, it's not waterproof, doesn't have wireless charging, and when you set it up, you have to say no to a lot of stuff. Amazon really wants to upsell you to subscribe to like everything. Oh, and there's also no LTE either. But that doesn't make it a bad device. It just depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So I would say if you're buying this as an e-reader, fantastic choice. I would say this is the best Kindle by far for reading, and Kindle is probably the best e-reader out of all of them. You have the best selection of books, you've got Audible audiobooks on there, and now with the pen, you have more functionality and a larger display that just makes it a better experience in my opinion. But if you're buying this primarily for taking notes, there are better options out there. Without the ability to really search your notes, with not the best way to like convert your notes over to text, like there's some things that are drawbacks for this that we see as not drawbacks for other e-ink notebooks out there. So for me personally, I'm obviously going to use this because I already bought it, and it's nice to have a little notepad next to me to like write down what I'm gonna do every day and have some basic notes, but I'm not gonna be using it for any notes that I want to sync to my laptop or any notes that I really need to flip through and search through in the future. This is more like maybe a scratch pad is kind of how I would view it, but also an e-reader, and that part I really do appreciate. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Kindle Scribe. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.